Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I hope everybody is awake. Actually, it's great to present right after Oracle because we work with these guys a lot here in the region. My name is Zsolt Fehér. I'm from Assessment Systems International. I'm the CEO of the company. There's a million ways how to start a presentation. I decided to say that everything what I'm going to say today is already obsolete, because I already prepared this presentation last week. And the world is so fastly changing in this arena as well, that actually, if I'm even just come up with something right now, after I finish in an hour, it's going to be different. Actually, I'm going to make sense for today, I really promise, for you. And I also would like to ask you to look at the screen, not at me, because I'm going to have 95 slides, and I'm going to be really fast at a certain point, okay? So I'm going to talk about the extreme makeover of HR, which is obviously a really pushy word and strong word for today. But obviously, we use this title to make sure that you guys listen and see what are the things out there in the world and how actually you can make sense of it in your own companies here in the Czech Republic as well. So actually, I'm going to talk about 4 topics today, which I'm going to repeat time to time. The first is, I would say that one very important thing for you HR professionals is really understand what leaders within your organization really want from HR. They don't want training, they don't want competency modeling, they want something else, which I'm going to reveal very soon what is that. Secondly, I'm going to talk about in a bigger perspective about the world out there. I'm going to use many cliches. I'm going to talk about all the big companies, Google, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to make sense out of that, I promise to you. Also, on the third topic, I'm going to talk about the digital companies, another buzzword which is already around since quite some months, and which actually, if you haven't faced it yet, I'm telling you right now, you will face a digital company kind of consultancy, kind of way how you move forward within your own company very soon. And obviously, getting closer back to our own arena, to HR, talking about a little bit about HR tech and what is really out there and what is the status quo of the organizations around the globe. Let me start with a small commercial break. I promise it's going to be only 1 minute. Again, Zsolt Fehér from Hungary, CEO of Assessment Systems, and I'm not a football player. Well, I used to play, but this doesn't work to be on Wikipedia, actually. We are working with tools in our company, like Hogan or Schufried, and also we have a lot of developments, what we do ourselves, focusing on cognitive abilities, 360 or some other methods. Actually, I founded already 15 years ago. We are all around the region, so we are far not only a Czech company, we have more than 50 people working with us, and actually we are working with more than 500 clients here in the region, some of you here in the room today. Okay, let's jump immediately on topic number 1 and talk about what are the expectations of business leaders from HR. Let's address that. We have done a survey a couple of years ago, and I believe this survey is still valid as we speak today, so let's see some points on that. So in this survey, we tried to find out questions of what actually leaders has within the companies, and also try to find some answers to some other areas. So actually, we tried to find out how to make HR as a business, or how to make a business impact from HR. What HR activities and projects bring the biggest added value to organizations, and if there are any differences between the C-level and HR expectations within the company. So we were focusing on these 3 areas. Let me ask you right now, what is your guess regarding this area? We were asking everyone who was part of this survey. We have done this survey all around Central Eastern Europe. And we were asking HR leaders, and we were asking C-level leaders, mostly CEOs within companies, to ask how do they think about HR within the company. So if I would ask you, what would be your guess? What was the ranking of HR? We have listed more than 20 different departments. Obviously, first is the most important one. The 20th is the least important one. So what do you think? What was the ranking of HR in this list from the HR director's perspective? Let's shout it out loud. Last one? Not that pessimist. Third one? 5th one. Okay, so that was from the HR director's perspective. What do you think, what was the ranking based on the C-level, mostly CEO's point of view? 4th? 10th? 2nd? Well, that's the answer, actually almost very close. The lesson here is that it's not too far from each other. Actually, even agile directors ranking it on number 2, obviously sales comes up as first on both lists, but even the C-level said that agile is extremely important in today's environment and have actually a very big impact on the company. But then what's the problem? Why you have to always fight for your budgets and why you have to always come up with explanations? And there is a different reason behind that. We have to say that that was one finding out of the survey. Sometimes agile strategy is unclear or something which is created parallel with the business strategy, though we believe that agile strategy is not something different but should be part of the business strategy. And sometimes also the C-level feels that agile miss some kind of integrated system which helps them to understand what the heck is going on in the department. We had 4 findings actually. The 4, I would say, obstacles which C-level found interesting or something to be changed from HR department perspective. The first one, what HR department is not visible and their lack of tools. HR strategy is unclear, I already mentioned that. Lack of measurability of HR projects, and especially from efficiency perspective. And also the 4th one, and resulting all these other 3 elements, HR department is perceived as a cost center and not really as a profit center. So what you should do is actually obviously going to find a solution for all these points. So having a more clear HR strategy, or just start to communicate about it. Metrics of HR activities which really impact businesses. I think that's also very important. You have to be visible, a little bit more visible, have more internal PR for HR within the organizations, and at the same time, and of course resulting all these other 3 elements, I would see after this, there's possibility that HR department is going to be perceived as a tool of profit and not a tool of cost. And of course there is a much more reasoning behind, and I'm going to talk about a lot of biases today. And as we know that in our world and in our part of the world especially, the C-level suit is filled with male. And we know also from another survey that the male leaders are mostly motivated by commerce, which means they are mostly motivated by money. What a surprise. They also look for results which can be quantified on a day-to-day basis. So I would say this is also an explanation behind, but a very important one to keep in mind. So lesson number 1, really visibility, measurability is really counts in these days words. So from HR department perspective, that's really important to think about. How to do that? Let's see that later. Okay, what's the word out there? This is going to be the buzzword jungle, which I'm going to throw at you in the next couple of minutes. I'm going to obviously, as I promised, talk about the so-called 4 horsemen, the 4 companies who are ruining or running our world these days, the guys who are running our content, the guys who are helping us to communicate, who you're chatting with right now, some of you in the audience, that's all fine. You can find me on LinkedIn and click on me, we can be friends very quickly, or Amazon, who is actually helping us to find products on a day-to-day basis and helping us, getting us closer. But I would say that not everything is so nice from out there. Once you hear about these companies, you only hear the success stories, but there are some success stories which are not that success stories. For example, Google with the glass. And also, at the same time, if you're really scratching the surface and if you're looking at the financial areas of these companies, you can find some interesting things. Even though this is a little bit older chart, I didn't find the newer one. And Amazon actually a little bit doing better, but not that bad, not that good as, for example, as you can see it on this chart, Macy's, one of the oldest retail chain in the US. So it looks cool. These companies have extremely nice big values, but in terms of measurable financial impact, not really there. I have 2 other charts to share with you. This is about the profit of the companies some of them were already in the previous slide, some of them are coming from, let's say, from the older era. This is the first quarter of 2015. They retained earnings and after the quarterly profit in $1 billion. Nice, big money. And if you look at just the recent one, this is the Q3 profit expectations, you can see that not many of those 4 companies actually on this list. Facebook is doing relatively okay, but if you're comparing with Apple, that's really nothing from that perspective. And even, sometimes we would like to see, or we see some of those companies on the chart or in the graveyard, like Microsoft and Intel, IBM, not too sexy. Sorry if there's anyone here from those companies in the room. But anyway, they're not considered to be that sexy anymore, but they still deliver they still deliver, and they're not even comparable with anyone else who is on the horizon. So I think there is some fundamental things behind which might be alarming. So actually, I have a feeling, that's my own personal comment here, that the startup culture and all these evaluating issues are going to come to an end very, very soon. Hopefully, we are not going to crash into that. Actually, I have an explanation why we are not going to crash into that, but let's see what's going to be in the future. So I'm just going to point out that company here in the orange. Of course, the company Apple, which everybody talks about, but I think that's also very important to say that they are maybe the only one who actually not only talking about stuff, but they deliver in terms of financial perspective as well. And maybe they are the company who actually try to find out something which is not only focusing on the future, but also looking into the past, trying to revolutionize things which are not only in the cloud or not in the software base, coming up with a Google Watch or the Apple Watch, which everybody considers a failure, but already in the first quarter of 2015, they sold more smartwatches than everyone else in 2014. I would like to have such a failure myself as well. So I believe really the answer here, why these guys are doing better than the others in terms of financial perspective as well, is this, that I think really the combination of old and new, in this case, going to work much better. It's not really black and white. There are actually rumors that even Amazon is going to buy up some companies which has actually department stores all around the US. Maybe they are going to buy a gas station chain or something like that, just to be able that actually they have a brick and mortar operation, not only in the world. So I would say from this, the learning part, for me at least, is that the combination of old and new might work better. Not necessarily we need to jump immediately on some solutions which are only imaginary, or something which is not going to really make financial impact on long term, but something which actually combines the old and the new, which talks about the instruments as well. Okay, actually this session has been advertised as I'm going to talk about digital companies, so now finally is the time. But before we do that, let me also bring another subject which might be also interesting for you. I think the generational issues, Generation Y and Z and all those, let me call BS, from my perspective, it's been overthrown the market. 10 years we are talking about the same thing. Well, I think we should step over already and just realize that it's over. We don't need to talk about more about those. I think actually, personally, that it's only interesting to talk about Generation Y because this is the first time when actually no one cares or anyone cares about it. 20 years ago, we had also generation shift, but we had no data and nobody really cared about those things. This is the first time when actually we realized that, oh yeah, there are younger people than us sometimes in the world out there. I think what's even more interesting and more challenging for you, I'm assuming, I see it on my own experience, that it's even more interesting to not only fight for people who are coming from Generation Y, but fighting for people who rather find sexy to work for startups, especially if you are coming from an IT industry. I know that you have extreme big challenge to find good IT people in every level and every programming language and so on and so forth, because those guys rather find more interesting jobs if they're going to work for a startup. Let me bring in this topic just to really conclude on this. We have done also another small survey when we try to find out what is really different in terms of between multinational companies and even the attraction, how they motivate people on a day-to-day basis, and with startups, and this is what we have found out actually. In startups, there is more people, it's more appealing for people who would like to go for risk. In that sense, multinationals obviously offering more security. People with startups, even using this slide word, they're more greedy. They want to achieve something. They want to see some shining light at the end of the tunnel, which is hopefully not the train, which is like 99% of the startups actually ending up there. But anyway, with multinational, that's compensated with a fixed base income on a day-to-day basis. Startups are going to be fast. You have 1 year to complete something and then you're dead, technically. Meanwhile, if you work for a large bank, of course, things take time, even just to sign any contract, maybe 2 weeks to complete, so the timing is much slower there. One very important difference that what we see, that the startups doing their recruitment processes rather focusing on the values and where we would like to go from these motivational standpoints. Meanwhile, multinationals rather focusing on the how to do issues and what to do issues, which is obviously manifested in the competency-based selection. And startups are focusing on innovation, and meanwhile, multinationals are rather more happy with the status quo. If there is a guy in your department in the bank who always wants to have a different recruitment software, you're not going to like him that much anymore. Meanwhile, in startup, this is really rewarded. My message here is obviously, as a company, if you would like to compete with startups, you have to have offerings for those people who actually now consumed by the startup market. So if you would like to really change your attitude towards them and motivational packages, what you put together, the column number 1 is going to be more interesting. Okay, but now let's focus on these digital companies. There is a lovely chart. I'm not sure how much visible is this for you. In this year, and already I believe last year, that was the biggest buzzword. All the major companies, mostly telcos, started to talk about digitalization of business. And of course, everybody started to think about, okay, we have to scan more papers, or is that going to be now, it's everything is on email? Well, it's far more complicated than then. So this actually talks about intelligence everywhere, new IT reality, and even merging the real world and the virtual world together, and how to do that very effectively for your company. This is all about the digital business or the digital disruption, which everybody talks about these days. And of course, what's the relation to HR is rather coming from the fact what is happening with many of the companies out there. For example, in the Fortune 500, more than 52% of the companies has been gone, killed, or merged with someone else in the last couple of years, and mostly because of technological disruption. And this is actually going to just continue. Even what's the implication for you from HR perspective? Very likely, I don't know how many of you know what a UX designer is doing. Put your hands up if you know what a UX designer is doing. Usual 2.5% of the audience. So these guys are helping actually to make nice screens, to make a user experience better when you visit some website. Very likely 15 years ago, nobody was born, or 20 years ago, that I want to be a UX designer. And even more going further, since we know that not only these statistics is going to be disruptive, but the fact that the Fortune 500 companies' average age is dramatically decreasing in the last couple of years, which means that in the 80s or 70s, there was something like 50 years old was the average company in a Fortune 500. Now it's going down around something like 25, and there's a prediction that by 2030, it's going to be 15. Which means, if you count well, that some of those companies just born today are going to be part of the Fortune 500. So let's prepare from HR perspective for that, for something, for a job market or for a company with some positions which are not existing. So actually, if you're a little kid, if you would ask your little kid, okay, what are you going to be when you be raised up, maybe a 5-year-old? The best answer is that I don't know, because that job is not existing yet. And actually, ladies and gentlemen, that's the reality. So how to prepare for that from digitalization perspective? What are let's say, the rule of thumbs? What are those secrets of successes in a bulk? Obviously, it has to be really transformation-focused issues, or the innovation has to be part of the transformation of what you do within the companies. It has to be relevant. Personalization comes in with a big package here, really, really personal messaging and personal involvement of everyone within the organizations. Authenticity is actually very, very tricky one, because authenticity means that you have to be really open and transparent about many things, which I'm going to address a little bit later, what are the boundaries for that. And obviously that has to be an intention driven, so very much like a startup attitude, how you do within the company. And obviously the major question is that, is HR ready for that or not? Well, the good news may be spoiling some surprises. When I started to talk about these issues in May, I think HR was not ready, but only after a couple of months, I'm happy to say that yes, there are possibilities of going further with this. Okay, I was talking about what leaders expect. They expect actually measurable actions from you guys to, again, I would say that those companies who are successful in the long run in the world out there, again, is going to have some impact and some measurable points. Yes, there's a need to going for digitalization, impacting in every department of the company, including HR. And let's see what are those HR tech applications which are already out there, and maybe some of you're already using. I have this quote, I'm sure you read that already a couple of times in LinkedIn. I just put up the last line here, that maybe if Uber doesn't have cars, Airbnb doesn't have rooms, Facebook doesn't have a content, maybe future companies will not have a talent either, because that's going to be a huge talent pool and nobody's going to work for anyone. Yeah, something like this also happen. So let's see those companies who are already working with the future. Sorry, Oracle guys, there is IBM as well on the products side, who is doing very very similar activities out there. They have a product so-called Watson. I don't know how many of you heard about Watson already. It's not a gentleman. Actually, Watson was one of the founders of IBM way back then. It's a supercomputer who actually, in this picture, a couple of years ago, already beaten a couple of guys in a Jeopardy television show, a supercomputer, who has been started a kind of a toy, but actually it's getting more and more serious. Watson has been used already to identify different illnesses with patients in hospitals, with a 99% of accuracy in hospitals. And also they are already in our arena. Watson already existing. Actually, I encourage you to try out. It's actually so far now it's free to go on and register and have a login to try whatever Watson is capable for. Actually, you can use it already in HR implication. They're already predicting personality based on different technologies. Based on different technologies, we are rather counting on your words. Obviously, when you do your online activities, you are cautiously and unconsciously, leaving digital footprint, which is mostly your words out there, which actually helps us people who are working with data in assessment systems to actually identify who are you, more than you think. Especially, there were a couple of studies which has been done not too long ago. As you know, we are working with Hogan Assessments. Thomas Chamorro-Premuzic was here last year in the conference. He was already talking about some examples for this, but also I recently visited in Stanford University a Polish guy, Michał Kozinski, who is, I would say, quite famous in the arena and doing many analyses in social media, analyzing social activities and correlation of social activity with personality. And this is some areas where what they, with his research team, come up with. You know, in personality, the most common way of looking into someone's personality is looking into the so-called Big Five instrument, which has 5 scales. And if they looked into different online activities from different people and they tried to correlate it with different scales of these Big Five, there are some not too much surprises. For example, with extroverted people could using words like bar or drinking. Open people talk about folk or human. And agreeable people talk about more awfulness or thought or lazy. And unconsciousness people, for completed, mostly talk about on competition or adventure or some other things. It was an interesting correlation with that. And what they come up with is a couple of algorithms which are actually already available, which you can try yourself as well. This is a company called You Are What You Like. They actually treat me as a conservative, traditional person, well-organized, shy, and reserved. Not necessarily coming up with the best one. Also, there is another one, 5 Labs, which actually also coming up with something similar. And there is this company called Apply Magic Sauce. Actually, this is the project what Michael Kozinski put together. And they also even go further. They're not only predicting who am I in terms of personality, but using the big data application. They had analyzed more than 5 million people so far. As you can see, the model is not necessarily working well, even though I know I'm looking young, but not that young. I'm not 28, actually I'm becoming 40 just next week. And actually I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not 70%, I'm 100% masculine, that's for sure. Conservative, tradition, yeah. So the models are not necessarily bringing yet things together, which actually makes things, there are steps forward, which are possible to take into consideration, but by far the recipe is not really a success recipe so far. The only company actually we found interesting is the company called Crystal Knows, which is only looking into your LinkedIn profile and try to come up with a way how you communicate with people. Actually, this actually makes sense. This one we tried and tested, and it looks very, very cool. And actually, if you would like to read about that, just visit my LinkedIn profile, because we just launched an article about this and some other researches we have done with how to predict personality based on LinkedIn profile. Free advisory for you after today. So after Crystal Knows, there are of course some other companies which only also looking at your online behavior on a day-to-day basis. Companies such as Guild, Talent Bean, or Entelo. These companies try to anticipate when are you ready to change a job. It's really cool, and especially it's very important in terms of positions when there is a lack of talent. Because I think it's not a big deal to find talents in a market, and there are many talents on the market, but in a very specific UX designer who is only working in Java and knows XY APIs, In Silicon Valley, well, that's a big challenge. So over there, companies need to know when people are ready to change a job, so they're not calling them on a weekly basis without any result, but only calling them at very specific moment when they are ready to change, and all these companies, including Entelo, is working on these elements. And they're also working, obviously, looking at things and try to determine someone's future behavior based on their personality. So they look into the words, they determine the personality, and they try to find out how this guy is going to behave in the short future. So, but also there are some biases, because actually there are some researches which has been done. Some of them recently has been launched by Microsoft Research Institute, and they say that actually if you use algorithms like this, you are better off than if you're not using them. Yeah, it means actually that if you are using them for filtering candidates, not only this, but also finding right candidates based on other online activities, you are far better. Because these algorithms, most of the cases, not dealing with one very important factor, which is biases. I'm sure many of you in the room are here who say that I don't need any kind of personality prediction because I know. I'm 20% in the business and I know who is going to be good for sales, who is going to be for the managers. Statistically, it's impossible. It's impossible that everybody is going to be above average in this. So somebody out of 100 for sure is not going to have a good prediction rate. So ergo, when you make or some others make the selection choices, they might make a mistake. So these algorithms doesn't have biases. They doesn't have biases. Well, another research shows from Google that actually they have biases because the world is like that. For instance, if you would like, if they have done a pilot project when they started to advertise for C-level positions in certain areas in the US, and they tested is that position is going to, based on a computerized algorithm behind, is how it's going to show up in front of different candidates in the job postings. And what happened that 90% is only showed up for male, not to female, because the algorithm were looking for some patterns before, which said that in C-level they were mostly male people. So you have to be careful. Even though there are good technologies out there, good things out there which can be used on a day-to-day basis, but so to say, when garbage goes into the system, very likely garbage is going to come out from that system. So it has to be extremely, you have to be extremely careful how to do that. I know that today there will be some presentation about some applications, so I'm not going to talk much about that. Whatever is besides the predicting future changes in job career, there are applications focusing on cultural assessments within the company, employee engagement, other cultural ones, how people feel within the company, how they feel, how well is the company run from wellness perspective on a day-to-day basis, how people are happy within the companies. None of them really came through yet, but only 2 companies who joined the $1 billion club. A couple of startups, like 79 startups, I believe, in Silicon Valley, who are on the list. And 2 of them coming from the HR arena. One of them is a company right away from Salt Lake City, Utah, a company called Qualitrix, who actually runs a question analytical platform, 360 and some other stuff. They're already worth more than $1 billion. They have almost no revenue. Yeah, that's another lovely thing. And the other stuff is Plural's site, a company which I would say it's an e-learning site or a MOOC site, a massive online course site, which has already reached the $1 billion valuation in the stock market. Just a side story about e-learning and blended learning. There was a couple of years ago a tryout in California in the higher education system with a company, one of the major e-learning companies or MOOC companies called Hrtv.cz a couple of years ago, and they started to actually very nicely and slowly change the curriculum and have certain subjects to be taught only in the online course itself, because suddenly they realized that it's not going to really work, that everybody has to pay for tuition, so let's go for some online courses. And actually what they did is that they changed even courses like mathematics to be run on an online course. And what really happened that in the end of the day was not really successful because only 25% of the people passed the test. So this is not really what we would like to see, I guess, in the changing curriculum or changing education system. So actually the California state decided not to work anymore with Hrtv.cz. There are some other other companies here in Europe. And I would say until in 2015, we could say that this area was not really developing that much. There was some kind of stuck situation. But I would say that now 2016 is changing because something is cooking. We can see that more and more companies have started to use different applications, applicant tracking systems such as Taleo provided by Oracle as out there. It's already more and more companies are using, but let's say how you can use it better and how you can make the steps towards actually making some actions and doing those investments which are needed from HR perspective. So actually from your perspective, where you can start, where you can make sense of all what I have said today to quantify your actions, to make sure that you use methodologies which make sense at the end of the day. Obviously, there are some action points which needs to be done. Design your organization to deliver solutions. Create a business integrated networks of excellence. Of course, HR needs to be a talent magnet, so I have to be more sexy within the company. Invest in HR development and skills. Obviously, if looking at HR analytics, building the right team and show that ROI, very important there. Start with the tools you have. Maybe that's the first thing you can do even right now when you leave. Partnering with IT, very important element. Focusing on the immediate business need to respond to all what the C-level leaders would like to see. Leveraging embedded analytics by upgrading technology platforms are very, very important. And obviously, not only looking into the crystal ball in terms of predicting the future, but also doing some data analysis of what you can do in terms of turnover within the companies, what you can use in churn and retention rates, what are the risks you have within the organization, who are the talents where you need to really focus on, and obviously already focusing on those things which are going to influence your company in a couple of years and trying to come up with models which are actually there. This is already happening, this is out there, this is not the future, this is the presence. And there are some learning points already because everybody's just learning. This is only a couple of years old industry. When we analyzing people based on their words, based on their online activity, based on their personality, and we try to make sense and correlate that with business results and try to, already forecast who is going to leave your company within a year. And there are models which actually able to do that already. But this is very early stage. We're just making the first steps. There are, of course, some obstacles sometimes. There are some security issues. There are some data protection issues which has to be taken into consideration. But that's only for sure that if you guys start today, any of these, if you start to use any of those technologies in the more integrated way, you're going to be in the top notch of the companies because based on some research, is only 4% of the companies recently doing this really holistic and really structured approach within companies. So if you would like to be in the top 4, I highly recommend that you start to think about these items and try to make sense of all of this. So I think here, reinventing is rather reskilling on some areas, being open for this and really finding the answers for those what your leaders are looking for. And I was already mentioning 3 times, but I mean it. Look at our LinkedIn research, which has been published last year, so maybe you can save some bucks in terms of already just looking at some candidates' LinkedIn profile, already can tell that who the guy is that. Looking forward to see you online and offline in the break as well. Thank you very much for your attention.
And thank you very much for the presentation. And in advance, all the best for your birthday, naturally.
Thank you.
Do you have a goal for your 41st year of your life?
It's not public.
No, it's not public. Okay, I don't want to know. Rather not to know. Okay. Chcete se na něco zeptat? Máte jakékoliv otázky pro Zsolta Fehéra k jeho prezentaci? Zdůrazňuji, že jeho prezentaci si po konferenci budete moci stáhnout. Pošleme vám odkaz, kde budete mít odkazy na jednotlivé prezentace, které si tak budete moct v klidu a v pohodě prohlédnout, tak abyste si dopodrobna třeba i probrali jednotlivá čísla, která případně slova, pokud jde o tuhle konkrétní prezentaci, která jste na nich viděli. Je něco, co by vás zajímalo?
In the break maybe, yeah? Everyone needs some coffee.
Yeah, we will have a break in a second. Before that, I would like just to ask you, what is, from your point of view, the biggest challenge of the year 2016? 2016 and HR, and the biggest challenge which can be solved?
I believe there are not too many changes in terms of 2015 and 2016 challenges. That's still going to be same, especially in our region. Lack of talents in many different areas, starting from blue-collar workers to IT professionals. That's going to still remain a major challenge from this perspective. And and not everything is influenced by us HR professionals. There are so macroeconomical standpoints in that, but I believe implementing all these, what I was telling about, is going to be a necessity for everyone. And then obviously stepping out of the status quo, it's painful a little bit, but it's rewarding in the longer run.
Just a little bit?
Yeah.
A little bit, just a little bit, you promise?
I think many of the participants here already started to prepare for this, so it's nothing completely new right now, but now the steps has to be made. So not only modeling something, but actually make sense out of it and make it happen. That's actually more challenging than just coming up with a model.
From your point of view, from your experience, what's the critical part of implementation in this process? From your experience, from the practical examples?
There's a couple of them. Obviously, working with IT, that can be really a challenging area. So I have to have a really good cooperation with IT, if I'm talking about the technological perspective. And also the other thing, which I already mentioned a couple of times, the method of garbage in, garbage out. So you have to, if you talk about data analysis or big data, or in this case, rather small data within companies, that you have to look for the right algorithm. Because sometimes algorithms can be misleading. Even ourselves as people, if we are reading a newspaper, we can find some patterns that yes, there is a letter A in every corner, so yeah, that means something. Computers are doing the same thing. Sometimes they find patterns in something which is totally useless. So actually, using tools which are already used in the market, like personality prediction, which is already researched 50 years, 30 years, if you use that as an input data, you have much better chance that actually you have good data which comes out and you can make sense of that.
So be very careful what we are putting in to be sure that we are getting something good out.
Yeah, exactly.
OK. Máme tady jednu otázku, jestli vás mohu poprosit, jestli přidáte mikrofon, prosím.
Jirka Švadlenka, Ardak, Skedovaný, good morning. Please, I have one question to you. Lack of talent. It's practically a word which we hear everybody and every time. What do you mean? What is the rate of the talent in the usual society? It means the rate of talent is constant, or it is increasing, decreasing, or it is rate of the talent constant and business is growing. Why we are in lack of talent now?
Okay, thank you very much. Excellent question. This is something what you not should tell that excellent question, but it is an excellent question because it brings me to one topic which I like to talk about, because we always talk about talent when we think about someone who is going to be a big CEO of some companies. Why? I think we need talents even to be a cleaner or to be someone who's a conductor at the bus. So I think, number one, everybody has to find where that talent lies. And not everybody needs to go to a talent program. Nobody needs to be in the C-suite of a company. You need workers as well. So I think that's one thing that, okay, it's a very relative question how you say that who is the talent from that perspective. So I think our goal and actually our mission in assessment systems is that we would like to realize everyone's potential. And yes, if you are a good agriculture farmer, you enjoy it and you have the skills to do it, let's be it. I'm not going to push you to become a lawyer or go to C-suite. I think that's very important there, that everybody should realize its own potential in terms of talent. Actually, just to answer your question, statistically, when we are analyzing personality and we looking for someone who is, we call it high fit, let's say in a leadership position, you need 3 parts of personality there. I'm not going to tell the secret, which 3 parts, but if you are all on those 3 in a high fit position, that makes only 6% of the society in big box, so mathematically. So I would say that in every profession, that would be my mathematical answer, 6%. But obviously it changes, because if somebody shifted to a different career, maybe they will be higher, better fit for there. So I think the key, again, just going back for my answer how I started, it's more interesting to identify everyone who is the talent for what, and then help him to be developed to that area.
And would you say that 6% is constant, or is it changing during the years?
Mathematically, it is.
Mathematically, it's constant.
Maybe it's different people because they're out of the market or coming to the market, but statistically, that's something like that. Yeah.
And would you say that that's the very same thing for all the branches?
In terms of,
for example, automotive or telecommunications and such?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Please.
Zsolt, as you were describing the future work of HR, it appears to me as a totally new job, or different as it used to be. How would you, as a specialist on diagnostics, describe a desirable profile of an HR in the future? are we here the correct people?
Should I answer this question or not?
Be careful what you say right
yes,
now.
Yes, yeah. I am trying to be diplomatic as possible, but actually no, it's not that bad. It's not that bad because I think these tools are not going to change. Again, even in the previous talk, somebody was asking about the effect of real life issues and computerized actions. This is all computerized actions which helps you to be better in your day job or be more effective, but still obviously people management skills, being there on a day-to-day basis, being the caring institute within the organization, those skills are going to be needed from that point to use maybe different technologies, to forget about actually collecting CVs, to forget about reading CVs, which puts your hands up if you're enjoying reading CVs, by the way. So actually it's just helping you to be more efficient and somebody put up hands? No? Okay. So it's just a helping way of how to do things. And once I would say that putting the model together, that's one painful exercise. But then it's not only you, it has to be IT and maybe some consultancy companies or someone who helps you to create that environment. And one that's done, pretty much is going to be like Watson, a fully automated computer just spits out the result, which obviously you have always the chance to reevaluate and look into it, but it's just going to help. So I think in that sense, in terms of the day-to-day job, it's not going to be harder, actually it's going to be easier.
Prosím, jestli podáte mikrofon do třetí řady od zhora, tak abychom mohli položit další otázku. Povídejte, co vás zajímá.
My name is Jan Pavelka, and at the very beginning I have to say that I'm a real fan of HR analytics. Can you give us some examples, I mean specific cases from your own company, how you apply the approach that you just introduced? Mm-hmm. Because I can imagine that this is for large companies with thousands of employees, but how you can apply it in a small scale?
Thanks. I don't want to be too promotional today, but if you ask so, and you have to confess that we never met before, yeah? We never met before. So I suggest that you guys visit our website. Sorry, I was promising not to be promotional, but I have to. So if you go to our website and you're looking for our new product called Intelligent Team Report, that's going to have the answers. Obviously, this we are at the very beginning, like everyone else, to do and really doing analysis. And I know where you're coming from because I guess your question originates that if you don't have too many data, how you can make sense of small data. That's one part of the story, and that's right, but we still can find some patterns, and that's why we are stepping back, and we are not looking at the data analysis at first, but going back to our own profession, which is personality. And based on personality, predicting behavior within the company. That's something, one element everyone can start, even if you have only 2 employees. There's nothing major, and then we start to collect data, and then sooner or later we're going to have enough that we can make prediction models which could work. So actually it's by far not only for large customers. Actually we started with small startups with this. Maybe one, yes, I can share that. In Poland, maybe you don't know, but Poland is an empire of games, of computer games. And there is one company who is one of the worldwide leader in one segment of some shooting game. I don't even know what they do. And actually we have started with them at first, only with the management team. And I would say it works perfectly. And everything which I was showing in the previous slide, churn, retention rate, talent program, inclusivity or not, that's all in the model. We tried to, in this case, was there, and it's already working with them as well. But because we're not looking at the data and not waiting until enough data comes up, we're already using well-worked models. Actually using models we're focusing on people's potential, that's coming from their personality. We're also looking for the reputation within the company. So what others telling about them. And it's a form of 360, nothing new in that perspective. And then performance comes in as a third element, which means that then we are looking into business data. And we believe that these 3 dimensions needs to be very important there. You need to be good potential, people needs to like you, and you need to deliver. If you have all these 3, you have a secure job. If one of them missing, okay. If 2 of them missing, better prepare your CV.
Je zodpovězena vaše otázka? Děkuji za tuto odpověď. Thank you very much also for the answer and especially for the presentation.
See you in the break.
Zsolt
We have
Fehér.
a booth out there. Yeah.